Please be upstand for the chair.
I wish to inform the Council of the passing of former Councillor Oswald Burt, who was a councillor in the North Shields ward from 1988 to 1996. Can I ask everyone to stand and observe a minute's silence, please? I've received apologies from Councillor Fox, Janet Hunter, Wilson. Are there any more apologies?
Councillor Bartoli and Councillor Arkley, Chair.
Thank you. I've also got John Hunter, sorry.
Chair. Councillor Craven's going to be late. She's stuck in traffic.
Okay, thank you. Matthew?
Councillor Gary Bell and Councillor Linda Bell.
Thank you. Any? I have seen you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntyre may be a little late. She's coming straight from work.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay. Councillor Lott? And Wendy Lott as well. Right, thanks. Right, public questions, item 1 on the agenda. I received 2 valid questions from members of the public to be asked at this meeting. 30 minutes is allowed for questions from members of the public. Each questionnaire in attendance will have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question and will have up to a minute. The person responding has 5 minutes to reply to the initial question and 2 minutes to reply to any supplementary question. Any supplementary question must arise directly out of the substantive question or reply. Is Mr. Appleby in attendance? No, he's not in. If he's not here, we'll take the question as read. Councillor McMullen, will you respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Many thanks for the question. The authority takes cybersecurity extremely seriously. When the IT team learned of the incident, immediate action was taken to minimise the exposure to any risk, both to the authority's own data or any other data of customers that we hold. I am pleased to confirm there has been no data loss or damage as a result of this or any other incident. The authority was made aware of Capita's data breach through several sources. Whilst information was being sought from Capita, the police and the National Cyber Security Centre, the NCSC, the decision was taken to switch off all technical connections and isolate any systems involving Capita. This did cause temporary disruption to services. However, these were all restored within 3 days. However, this was only done after the assurances had been provided from Capita and the NCSC that cyber incident had been contained. Following the incident, reassurances were sought from Capita about the potential impact of the data breach on North Tyneside Council and our customers. The authority has received written assurance from Capita's Managing Director for Local Public Services, Paul Abram, that this attack was limited to 4% of Capita's servers, and none of these servers were used to provide any service to North Tyneside Council. Therefore, the authority's data was not at risk from this incident. The authority has been informed that a detailed forensic analysis is in progress for the servers that have been impacted, and that we will be notified if this does highlight any new risk to the authority's data. Thank you.
As Mr. Appleby's not here, we'll go on to the second question. Mr. Steele, do you want to ask the question?
As part of my concerns about the Council's progress towards North Tyneside achieving net carbon zero by 2030, I was wondering about the policies, procedures and training that the Council have in place to prevent vehicles, particularly council vehicles, pavement parking and running idling on pavements, to try and improve active travel and air quality in the district.
Councillor Graham, would you like to respond to the question?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. We have 400 vehicles in the council's fleet. 16 vehicles are now electric and 6 are hybrid. We are moving to replace diesel vehicles at the end of their economically useful life, and we will replace these with electric models where available. It is important to understand that up to half the carbon footprint of a vehicle's life is generated in its construction, so it is important environmentally to use vehicles to the end of their economic life. We have recently installed additional electric vehicles charge points at our Kenilworth depot to support the change from diesel to electric. Naturally, this change from diesel to electric helps both our carbon net zero 2030 ambitions and air quality. We have delivered specific training to our team that includes instructions on both idling and not parking on pavements. However, due to the nature of some of the services that the council delivers, for example, curbside waste collections, some vehicles will idle, but we work hard to keep this to a total minimum. Regarding air quality, I'm pleased to report that North Tyneside has good air quality, with nitrogen dioxide annual mean concentrations well below the UK air quality objectives, and we have campaigned to discourage engine idling as part of the Council's Go Smarter programme. We particularly have been working with our schools to discourage idling outside these premises and also encourage walking and scooting to school. You may have seen our lamppost stickers reminding drivers not to idle. It is, of course, an offence under the Highway Code to idle engines. The Council has published an ambitious carbon net zero 2030 action plan and is making good progress in delivering it. The borough's carbon footprint is down by almost half, and the carbon footprint of the Council's operations is down by over a half. The action plan is currently being refreshed and will be presented to September Cabinet, alongside an update on performance with key highlights. Thank you once again for your question.
Mr. Steele, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. Thanks, Sandra. In light of that, I was just wondering what steps a member of the public could take when they come across vehicles idling pavement parking, particularly council vehicles. As my colleague of mine has recently experienced that, approached the driver, and the driver had said that he couldn't switch off his engine because of battery problems, I think he said, in the car or the van.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said. He couldn't switch off his engine because
So the crux of the question is, what steps can a member of the public take if they come across vehicles idling, particularly council vehicles?
I would encourage anybody who sees any vehicles, council vehicles idling or parked on pavements, to take a photograph and to send in to our Customer First Centre. And we will fully investigate that and see if anything can be done as to why they were idling. It may be that they were emptying bins, say on the prom or something like that, and they have to be up on the pavement and they have to be idling to use the machinery to lift the bins. But we will fully investigate it if you provide us with the information and the time and the location. Thank you.
Can I just ask one more thing to clarify?
I think the councillor has answered your question.
Just one point of clarity, if you don't mind. It's just about who members of the public contact. I realise you said it, but I didn't quite pick it up.
I said Customer First Centre.
Customer services. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the members of the public for their questions. Moving on to declarations of interest now. Can I remind members if they have any registrable or non-registrable interests in matters appearing on the agenda and in the nature of the interest must be verbally declared in respect of any items of business to be discussed at this meeting and the nature of such interests. You are also invited to disclose any dispensation from the requirement to declare any registrable or non-registrable interests that have been granted to you in respect of any matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should also complete the card which is circulated and return it to the receptacle located on the desk of the Democratic Services Officer before you leave. Councillor Grayson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Regarding motion 1 on the agenda, I have a registered interest as I'm a board member of the Teachers Building Society, and I have filled in the form, and I will also leave the room when we get to that item.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Minutes of the previous meeting. I was going to ask you, can you confirm that, but you've already agreed it. So right, we're moving to motions now. The next item of motions, we have 5 valid motions have been received and detailed in the agenda. Please note details of the legal and financial implications of each of the motions which have been circulated to all members prior to this meeting. Motion 1, signed by Councillors William, Samuel, Carl Johnson and Karen Clark. Can I invite Councillor Samuel to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. There will be those on the other side of this chamber, as they often do, who will suggest that this isn't a local issue and it's from a Labour playbook. I can say that nothing is further from the truth. On the doorsteps as we go out on this side and talk to residents, the cost of living crisis is the #1 concern being raised. Our people are struggling and nothing is hurting more than the cost of housing, be it mortgages or rent. Following on from Liz Truss' disastrous crashing of the economy last year, the average mortgage rates for residents in North Tyneside is likely to rise by about £2,000 a year at least. We are talking to people now who are having to find an extra £200 or more extra per month as their fixed rate comes to an end, or when they apply for new mortgage products. This is impacting in the private renting sector too, as landlords pass on their spiralling costs to their tenants. The situation is only likely to get worse as interest rates are expected to rise as the year goes on, and inflation remains so much higher than it is in Europe and in the USA, amongst other places. Food prices are rising too, and the help that households received in electric fuel bills last winter has come to an end. Fuel prices are much higher than they were 2 years ago, and households will feel the full impact this winter as the choice is no longer whether to heat or eat. It is whether to pay the cost of housing or eat or heat. There's a mortgage crisis looming, and in the face of that crisis, the advice from Richie Sunak is to hold your nerve. Unfortunately, banks and building societies so far have not agreed to accept holding your nerve in lieu of additional payments. The behaviour of the lenders so far has not been the best. It's increasingly difficult to talk to your bank as branches, certainly as we can see in Whitley Bay and other places, are being closed and there are very few branches left. Your only chance of getting an appointment to get an appointment to discuss your issues is increasingly difficult, and calling up call centres, which is your main way of access now, is almost impossible. Responses are not always helpful, and sometimes you can't even get through at all. It's also noticeable that most banks, while very quick to increase their rates to lenders, are very slow to offer corresponding increases to savers. So by general agreement, banks and other lenders have been encouraged to work with borrowers to agree payment holidays, interest-only products, longer repayment terms, and to delay or cancel repossessions. The record in this area is not good. The government response has been to call them in and basically ask them to play nice under a voluntary agreement. It isn't good enough. There needs to be a legislation to compel lenders to actively work with individuals who are struggling with their payments to find a solution and to eliminate or reduce completely if possible the repossessions of homes. By all accounts, from those in the know, there is very little legislation going through Parliament at the current time, given the fact the government isn't putting very much forward at all. So there is space in the timetable to legislate to ensure that banks act responsibly and act in a way to try to mitigate this crisis that's upon us. So the motion simply calls upon the government to legislate, ask the Mayor to call upon the government to legislate to protect our residents and ensure that all steps are taken to keep them in their homes. And I hope that all council members will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Councillor Cole-Johnson, do you want to second this motion?
Second, reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Okay. I'll now invite members to speak on the motion. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Chair, this is the usual Labour Group motion. Cut and paste, write a letter of complaint. Highly depressing. Nevertheless, it is important that we address the three demands that are embodied within this motion. I know there are only 2 bullet points there, but they actually make 3 demands. Chair, the first demand is to ask the Prime Minister to legislate the outcomes that have been agreed between the mortgage lenders, the Financial Conduct Authority and the Chancellor. These agreements, as we know, are known as the Mortgage Charter. It's an excellent mortgage charter, actually extends the term of the mortgage, offers a move to interest only, reduced monthly payments for a temporary period, and all of these are actually with little or no impact on credit score. Now, this charter is designed to ensure that borrowers can continue to make repayments. No wonder, therefore, that over 90% of mortgage lenders have already signed up to this charter, a charter which has been established for the benefit of both the mortgage lender and the borrower. There is absolutely no requirement, therefore, to legislate. This is already functioning to the benefit of all. Chair, the second demand of the Labour Group is for the Prime Minister to bring forward policy to tackle what they call the Tory mortgage penalty. You'll see it up there. Quite what they mean by the Tory mortgage penalty is open to conjecture. I do believe that Keir Starmer actually used that term 3 weeks ago in PMQs. But let me just simplify this. Let's just simply refer to you to just 2 of the raft of measures that have been introduced by this government to help people avoid the worst scenario, which is obviously repossession. These include support for mortgage interest loans, and that's for those in receipt of an income-related benefit. Pre-action protocol, which offers borrowers protection even in court, even if it went to that situation. We don't want that, obviously. But the government recognises the challenges facing households due to elevated cost of living, and as you can see, has taken action to protect struggling families, despite what has been said opposite. Overall, support to households to help with higher bills is worth £94 billion. That's £3,300 per household on average over the 2 years, 22 to 24. One of the largest support packages in Europe. Chair, thirdly, now the third demand is to ask the Prime Minister to end the crisis in the private rented sector. Yes, we all recognise that inflation, my apologies, inflation is impacting all sectors of society, tenant and landlord. And the only solution is to reduce inflation to a manageable level. It is reducing, actually, despite what was said over there. Yesterday, 8.7 down to 7.9 today. And there's been a commensurate fall in mortgage rates today as well. Now, every economist accepts that increasing base rate is a blunt tool, with which to address the cost of living crisis. But everyone, even the Labour front bench themselves, they recognise that rate rises are a necessary evil. The Shadow Chancellor admits that were Labour in power, she would have to follow the current government's tax and spend policies. Keir Starmer, when interviewed by Laura Kuenssberg last weekend, acknowledged that he would not move the Bank of England inflation target from 2% to 4%. And last week, through his retention of the two-child benefit cap, we also realise that these responses tell us that everyone, at long last, Labour does recognise that global perspective of this monetary situation. It's not a Tory cost of living crisis. It's much wider than that. So the Labour group opposite...
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you very much. Labour group opposite, don't waste your time writing to the Prime Minister when your own party recognises the problem and offers the same solution as the Conservatives. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I'm really surprised at the Tories' response to this motion. I can't believe that you wouldn't support anything that would support helping people who are in crisis at the current time here in our borough, North Tyneside. I think it's absolutely appalling. People are really struggling, and having a secure home, whether it's rented or you own your home and you're able to pay your mortgage and meet your bills, is a really essential factor in promoting positive health and well-being.
Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. The irony is not lost on me from Councillor Johnston telling us that the current cost of living crisis is not a Conservative problem, despite spending 10 years telling the Labour Party that the 2008 financial crash was the Labour Party's problem. It absolutely is the Conservatives' problem. They crashed the economy with their mini budget, spending costs spiralling and the damage to our reputation on a global scale. They created a housing crisis because they didn't build enough homes. They drove up the cost of mortgages, putting homeownership out of reach for millions of first-time buyers. Add on top of this, their botched Brexit deal added to the economic woes that people in this country are facing. Councillor Johnson says it's a waste of time writing to the Prime Minister. Well, it's not a waste of time. Mortgage holders in this borough will be £170 a month worse off, Councillor Johnston. What are you going to do for them? Are you telling me it's a waste of time to try and save people £170 a month? It's not. We need to tackle this crisis. It's ongoing and it's really hurting in our borough. The private rented sector has also had its highest rise last month since records began. Both the mortgage rates and private rented sector as they are, Chair, people living in homes, it's becoming a real issue. It's not a waste of time to write them. It's a necessary that we write, and we must urge the Prime Minister to act. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. The move of the motion quite rightly blames the Tory government for the dreadful situation facing many families on the variable mortgage rate. But the motion is only offering a sticking plaster to what is in effect a housing crisis. Giving banks more money in interest payments in the long run and plunging borrowers into deeper and longer debt. Banks are, after all, private concerns, and with the maximising profit as their aim. Surely accepts that the massive shortage in affordable housing that is the root of the problem. That is as much a fault as the Labour government as Tory. Tony Blair remained true to Margaret Thatcher's policies to get rid of council houses and not building new ones. Keir Starmer is proposing no help for young families who have no chance at all for affording a deposit to buy a house. He is proposing no help for all those facing ever higher rents in the private rental market. The rental market, as he rightly says, is growing, and young people can't even afford to get on the housing market now. My example of that, my daughter's actually living in London and paying over £2,000 a month for a flat. This is a crisis, and I think I will support your motion because it's doing something, but I think Labour need to come up with a better plan. Thank you.
Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a little bit rich that Councillor Clark says that this is an issue on rents and that this motion would actually have any meaningful effect to change that when, frankly, she has been a part of the Cabinet who has increased council rents at every opportunity, even this year, where, as the Labour Party say, the cost of living has been increasing. Council rents up, council taxes up. That's what people in this chamber can change. We all have a vote on whether or not we increase council tax, and the Cabinet decides whether or not we increase rents. So I think right into the government, frankly, the Mayor could have written to the government a month ago when the motion was conceived, but instead we're wasting time in this chamber talking about things we can't change, when actually the things we can change, which are council rents and council tax, which impacts everyone across this borough's cost of living, the Labour Party do, frankly, nothing on. And that's where the glaring omission is from this motion. It's a complaint to the government rather than change what we can actually do in this chamber.
Anyone else? Councillor Thirlway.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should really cut through some of the nonsense that has been spoken tonight. And let's just admit the truth is that the economies don't know how to run the economy. You know, we've seen 13 years of stagnation. Last year, Liz Truss crashed the economy. We're all paying for it still. We've got the highest rate of inflation in the industrialized world, except for Russia. And actually, who feels better off? Who is more optimistic about their financial position? I think only the rich, really.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Buying a house is, for the vast majority of people, the biggest financial decision that they will ever make. And taking a mortgage is of itself a very risky business. For it's a very long-term commitment where generally the interest rate is completely unknown for much of the term of the loan. Which of us can say when we've signed on the dotted line that we knew what was going to happen in 15, 20 years' time? Historically, interest rates in the UK have tended to be around 5%, with mortgages mostly on variable rates, and there can be huge variations. I remember myself the rates being in the teens when I first bought a property, and purchasers in recent years have benefited from historically low rates and also from the ability to fix the rate for several years. Some of those fixed arrangements will have quite some time to run. It's always a hazard calculating the risk of interest rate rises. If the rates rise, regrettably, people have to pay more, but if they fall, as they have done over the last decade or so, borrowers benefit and pay less. It's difficult here to see from this motion quite who the movers are saying should pay for the changes which they want, but certainly the tab's got to be picked up somewhere. Of course, we should have a safety net in our country, and we do, in the form of social security, and in extreme circumstances, such as in the pandemic, we've had interventions. And indeed, since 2020, there's been 2 colossal government interventions, one for the pandemic, and the second being the subsidies and price guarantees introduced to cushion people from the effect on energy costs of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it's perhaps not surprising now that we're seeing demands for assistance for borrowers, and maybe it's become an expectation that the government will always intervene, and maybe there'll be more requests if rates do rise, although happily the indication is from recent news that they're going to fall. But inflation is an enemy to everybody, whatever their circumstances, right across the scale, and rising interest rates is a well-established weapon to deal with it. Mortgage rates rising, unfortunately, aren't unusual. They're not a one-off like a pandemic or an invasion. But happily, as I say, there is an indication that inflation is starting to fall. I think possibly intervening now, because these things have got to be paid for somehow, could cause more risk-taking and further problems down the line. Secondly, I dispute the assertion in the motion that banks and building societies are failing to assist borrowers. Lenders are already bound, apart from the recent government action, by the FCA rules, which require them to give borrowers a reasonable chance to make arrangements and to consider reasonable requests to change when and how payments are made. Lenders don't wish to have to repossess properties. I would urge anyone in difficulties to speak to their lenders, to contact their lenders as soon as possible. A cursory glance at all the websites from building societies, for example, indicates a willingness to discuss ways of assisting borrowers when they are in difficulty. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Spowett.
Thanks very much, Chair. I was reluctant to come in, but I think the comments about the mortgage charter cannot go unchallenged tonight within this council chamber, because in effect, it's just recycling, as Councillor Wallace has just said, existing approaches to cushioning the impact of the cost of living crisis on mortgage holders. If you take interest-only payments on mortgages, that's not new. If you take mortgage holiday, that's not new. If you take another couple of factors in there, there's nothing new. So to me, it's typical of a government that have just run out of road.
Elected Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to make a point to this chamber and to our residents, the fact that if this government had not cut our budget by over 130 million over these years, we certainly wouldn't have to do the things that we're doing to our residents.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm certainly not going to repeat what most people have said about this trust in our budget. I just want to say that it's not just about interest rates, as it's been brought out. It's also about what those interest rates mean as a proportion of income. So how much does it actually mean? If you go back to 1999, your mortgage was roughly 4 times your earnings. Now it's 9.1. You can see that that's the actual effect in the charter. I know it's been brought out, the charter. The problem is that actually when you look into the charter, it's how effectively can that be implemented, and how long can you actually go as a saver pushing interest back or pushing payments back. So there's real concerns that it is just a sticking plaster, and I think this is a very reasonable approach. There's nothing wrong with writing to the Prime Minister on behalf of all of our residents, asking them to have another look at this. So I think we should all just put party politics aside and vote in favour of this motion.
Councillor Samuel, do you wish to exercise your right to reply?
Yes, I do. A few points to pick up on, if you don't mind, Chair. First of all, Councillor Johnson. I knew you were going to mention the cut and paste jive, because you always do. It's normally Councillor Bartoli's line, so obviously he might have given you a bit of help in that one, I don't know. But no, as I explained at the start of the introduction, it was very much born out of the door knocking we do weekly of what people are telling us they're concerned about, and that's where the motion came from, not from any cut and paste job. And as for your complaint about the Tory mortgage penalty, all as other people have said, it became about because Liz Truss crashed the economy last September. Quite obvious to everybody. We saw the mess that happened. That is what has made the crisis much worse than it would have been already. In response to Councillor Davis's point there, I mean, you may have, in your move to the other side of the room there, you might have forgotten that this authority has actually got a target of 5,000 affordable homes, and which is the highest in this region, and we're still committed to that. So just a little reminder for you there. And just in terms of banks doing things, the experience of our residents is it's difficult to talk to a bank when they're in trouble. As I said before, and I'm sure other people have noticed, the branches are closing. The only way to contact your bank or building society these days, most of the time, is to try and get through a contact centre. It can be extremely difficult. So there needs to be some stronger ties to make sure that banks will follow what they're asked for. We're not asking for additional public money towards that. We're just asking to regulate the banks more strongly to make sure they do what they were entitled. The Tories don't seem to be opposed to regulating banks or bringing legislation to regulate banks, because today we're hearing that because Nigel Farage couldn't get a bank account, many of your government ministers are saying that we must regulate the banks on doing that to make sure they give bank accounts to Nigel Farage. So if we can regulate that, I think we can actually bring in some regulation for other people as well.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Abstain. "42 votes for, Votes against, 2. Carried. Motion 2 by Councillors Erin Parker, Leonard, Michelle Fox and Councillor Carol Burris. Can I invite Councillor Parker Leonard to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. 1 in 8 LGBTQ plus people don't feel able to disclose their identity to their colleagues according to Stonewall surveys. So when you look around the people in this chamber, that would be approximately 8 of us here today. Approximately 8 of us here today that would hide who they really are at work and would have to live a double life. Approximately 8 of us here today that felt they couldn't be their true, authentic selves in the workplace. How damaging is this to those individuals? North Tyneside Council have a good track record of inclusion and champion the LGBTQ plus community, and there's always more work that can be done. Having an action plan with Stonewall and support from experts means that we can take the next step to solidifying this inclusivity into policies and procedures and actions. This will give all staff members clear guidance and a framework that will further improve the overall culture. We know how important getting the right culture is to any organisation. Being a diversity champion will solidify the Council's position and intentions and will transform the workplace culture into one that can attract, retain and nurture the top LGBTQ plus employees. I'm very confident if this motion is passed that North Tyneside Council could and will end up on Stonewall's top 100 employers list and could go on to be a gold, silver and bronze employer award winner. This will also be a clear message to our residents and the wider LGBTQ plus community that North Tyneside Council are behind them and stand with them. I am aiming high for North Tyneside Council and for the LGBTQ plus community, of which I am proud to be part of. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mudzingwa, do you wish to second this motion?
Thank you. I'm pleased to second this motion because I believe in equal opportunities for all oppressed groups. Becoming a diversity champion will give us the confidence and tools to make more progress to become LGBTQ plus inclusive leaders. This motion will only strengthen what we already do as North Tyneside Council. Statistics shows that 1 in 5 LGBTQ plus job seekers felt discriminated against when looking for jobs. Employers who are committed to LGBTQ plus inclusion can make real difference and create environments where all employees can flourish, regardless of who they are. Supporting this motion is a step along the way to a change culture, and I wish all of us could support this motion. Thank you.
I now invite members to speak on the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted that the Conservative Group will be supporting this motion this evening. Joining this scheme is actually something that I first raised with the Mayor almost 10 years ago, which makes me feel incredibly old. As a council and as councillors, it's important that we make sure that this authority is inclusive and that we are representative of all of our residents. When we last debated LGBT rights in this chamber, it was disappointing that some members felt they couldn't support the motion because they didn't know enough about the issue. Frankly, ignorance is no excuse. Every member of this council should stand with our LGBTQ plus members, officers and residents in solidarity, and I hope that this motion this evening from Councillor Parker Leonard is a really good opportunity for us to do that. I'm delighted that my group is actually made up of a majority of LGBTQ members, and that's one of the first groups in the country to be that, but of course there is more we can do as members and as an authority. I think this is a really good positive step in the right direction. I hope that it will mean that we can go further faster on it. So thank you very much.
Are there any other members who wish to speak? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. North Tyneside Council has very well embedded policies on equality and diversity to ensure that all are welcome as members of the workforce and also to ensure compliance with the Equality Act of 2010. I'm surprised and disappointed to hear Councillor Parker Leonard's views of North Tyneside and its workforce. This motion asks the Mayor to explore feasibility of participation in Stonewall's Workplace Equality Index and of the Council becoming a Stonewall Diversity Champion. However, I would caution against these. Many public, private and voluntary organisations have reconsidered their memberships after significant criticism that Stonewall's advice undermines compliance with the Equality Act of 2010 and can risk penalties, litigation, legal costs, fines and the like for following their erroneous advice. For example, The Times has reported, following numerous freedom of information responses, that they show Stonewall schemes going well beyond HR good practice and involving public bodies promoting a lobbying agenda for law reform. For example, a report by Aqua Rheindorf for the University of Essex found that its policy on supporting trans and non-binary staff, reflecting Stonewall's guidance, was not in line with the 2010 Act and in fact contributed to an environment of fear for staff holding dissenting views. It is concerning that Stonewall explicitly argues against taking a compliance approach and opposes using language which is in line with the legislation. Being compliant with the Act is something which all employers should aim to do, and I'm sure that North Tyneside already does so. It is not something which should require gold, silver or bronze awards dependent on an outside lobbying organisation charging fees for its services. Furthermore, Chairman, numerous organisations in many areas have left Stonewall. These include Channel 4, Dorset Police, the Government Equalities Office, Hounslow Council, the Nationwide Building Society, the Cooperative Bank, West Yorkshire Police, Swim England, NHS Highland, and there are plenty more. I do not believe that the Council should participate in Stonewall, nor explore the feasibility of doing so. It should, instead, continue to focus on full compliance with the Act to ensure that the Council is welcoming all employees and also focus on delivering improved services for all our residents. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else wishing to speak? No? Councillor Kerwin.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but I just felt a bit compelled there because it's very concerning to hear some members of this chamber parrot fear-mongering and conspiracy theories often shared online and in other forums. I fully support this motion. I believe North Tyneside Council already does a great job, but it doesn't mean that we can't do more, and we should do more. And I would hope that every member would recognise that the trans community are still human beings and deserve our support and respect and allyship as well. And this motion will help us go on the path to do that. Thank you.
Elected Mayor.
Chair, can I just make something very clear? I do support this motion and I have always been on the side of fairness and equality. But 10 years ago, as Councillor Bones will regret, you didn't ask me to put a motion through. You asked me about my views and I made them very clear how I supported everyone.
Councillor Parker Leonard, would you like to have your right to reply?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reassure everyone in the chamber that they can go on Stonewall's website and check the frequently asked questions where they extensively set out their views to people's concerns, like Councillor Wallace has just... Sorry. So it sets out extensive information about the concerns that Councillor Wallace has just set out there. So I would ensure everyone that there are responses and for people to check those. I also have full confidence in our officers here at North Tyneside Council to be able to manage and make sure that anything that is implemented is fully legal and just and will go to the lengths we need to help the LGBTQ community. Sorry. Just thank you for the support that we have had for the motion. I also hope, if successful, it will go further to highlight the plight of the LGBTQ plus community around the world, including trans people, who are seeing rights go backwards instead of progressing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? (48 for, 2 against). Now move on to motion 3. Councillors McAlpine, Bones and Bartoli. Can I invite Councillor McAlpine to move this motion?
Thank you, Chair. The motion that's being proposed today has one objective, which is to secure the future of one of the borough's most precious landmarks. St Mary's Lighthouse has been called the jewel in the crown of the North East coastline, and our residents are rightly proud of it, as is this council. This motion affirms the council's commitment to the site and lays out practical and unambiguous steps to restore its prestige. Since I became the new councillor for St Mary's Ward, my residents have expressed their dismay that the lighthouse has fallen into its current state following the failure of the 2018 refurbishment bid. I'm bringing forward this motion for them and for residents across the borough who would dearly love to see our horizon restored to its former glory. Passing this motion ensures that visitors to our coast see it at the best it can be, whether they're bringing much needed tourism to our towns, enjoying our festivals, or crossing the finish line at our largest sporting event. The motion seeks to...
Councillor McAlpine.
Yes.
That one's too much feedback.
The motion seeks to restore the aesthetic of the lighthouse in the short term, as well as safeguard the long-term future of the site. A vote for it is a vote to preserve our coastal heritage, and I hope that all members will be able to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder?
Second, I reserve the right, Chair.
Okay. Right, I'll now invite Councillor Johnson.
I'd like to move an amendment, Chair.
Okay, move your amendment.
I've already provided the Democratic Services.
All right.
I can speak to it now if you wish.
You can speak.
Yeah. It was always the Mayor and Cabinet's plan to bring us forward in next year's budget. That is...
So, can we have 2 minutes to read it?
It's not the mate for the Chair, Councillor Holmes.
Okay, right. Give them a couple of minutes to read it and come in.
Chairman, can we not have this in writing? Because some of us can't actually see the board properly.
We've got actual paper, so we'll get those handed out around the chamber.
Yeah, testing.
Okay, are we ready? Councillor Johnson, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. it always has been the Mayor and Cabinet's intention to refurbish and paint St Mary's Lighthouse, and it's all about when. We were always intending to put it in our budget when we present our budget proposals this year to council for the next financial year. We're asked council to come with us. You know, it would cost an additional, if we were to borrow to do it this year, it would cost us an additional £100,000 per year in borrowing costs. It is financially responsible. You know, we don't make policy via motion in this council off the hoof with costs attached to it. We need to be financially responsible, but also deliver for residents. This gets the right balance between doing what we need to tackle the issue and to get the right balance. Former Councillor George Westwater did come to see the Mayor and myself about this issue to try and get us to tackle this issue last year. And we always said we'd agreed to look at it, and we have continued to look at it, and we always want to try and do the best for St Mary's Lighthouse, because it is a fantastic icon along our coastline. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a seconder for the motion? Councillor O'Shea.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, for inviting me to support this amendment. I'm really happy to do so. Just to put it in a bit of context, I remember about 10 years ago, Dame Redfern promised that she would upgrade the seafront at Whitley Bay, and during the last 10 years that has been done in spadefuls. So thank you so much, Dame Norma. Can I just say that the improvements to the seafront in Whitley Bay have been quite significant, and in a recent poll from the Times, they indicated that Whitley Bay was one of the top 10 places to live in the United Kingdom. So that's an indication of the substantial, significant improvements in Whitley Bay, and particularly on the seafront. But yes, there is more to be done, and clearly the lighthouse looks a bit sad at the moment, and I urge the council to bring forward plans, and I think they're included in the amendment, to improve the lighthouse. A good lick of paint is what is needed here. It's a very expensive lick of paint as well, but I think this is the start of some further work that needs to be done on the seafront, and hopefully we can bring forward, when we get some funding, a regeneration of the whole of the lighthouse, which I think is a little bit sad and neglected inside. So I urge everyone in this chamber to support this resolution. It gives certainty to when the work will be done in the next financial year, which was missing, I think, from the original resolution. So once again, thank you, Dame Norma, for the work you've done for Whitley Bay. Thank you.
Elected mayors.
I just want to make it very, very clear that over a year ago, the then Councillor Westwater, who was the councillor in St Mary's, actually did come to see me, and we had a discussion about the importance of the lighthouse in Whitley Bay, and I told him that we would, as soon as can, get it into a budget to make this happen. And we're looking to try, well, we will put into next year's budget to make that happen. But it was Councillor Westwater that did come to see me over a year ago about this.
Does anyone else want to speak on the amendment? Councillor Wallace? Or Councillor McIntyre?
Thank you, Chair. I've got no problem with supporting this at all. You're right, the lighthouse is an iconic landmark in Whitley Bay. We represent St Mary's Ward. It has the name in our ward. It's just long overdue. Residents, unfortunately, in my ward are now not calling it the lighthouse anymore. They're calling it the Grey House. And unfortunately, that's how it looks. It doesn't show well on photographs, and it doesn't do well for our tourist industry in the area. So I've no problem with supporting this motion. What I would like to have confirmed tonight, maybe by the Mayor and Cabinet, is that you're saying that it's going to be in next year's budget proposals. Can we definitely confirm that it is going to be at least painted in the next 12 months? Because even if that was the only thing that was started, that would be a great improvement.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
I just want to say that is the intention to put in the budget for next year, to be quite honest. The cost of putting up the scaffolding is thousands and thousands of pounds to start with, on top of the council painting the lighthouse. but we will endeavour to put it in next year's budget, Councillor. Okay.
Councillor McAlpine, you have a right to reply. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just to say that I also am very happy to support this, and I'm glad that it's been acknowledged that my colleague George Westwater took this up with the Mayor and Cabinet a year or so ago. It's an issue which Councillor McIntyre and I have expressed concerns about on numerous occasions, and it has been very sad to see the lighthouse decline. But I am pleased that it's going to be restored and repainted, at least in the short term, and I'm grateful for that. And I know that our residents will be delighted that that is the case. Thank you.
Councillor McAlpine.
Yeah, on the basis of the timescale and the information that's been shared, we're happy to support the amendment. I'm pleased that bringing this to the Chamber has brought this to light in a way that I can share this information with our residents and residents across the borough. Yet very pleased that it'll be included in next year's budget, and I look forward to the work being completed.
Thank you. As this is a substantive motion now, we're going to go to the vote for the substantive motion. Oh, sorry, on the amendment. Then we'll go to something. Right, okay. So vote on the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? Unanimous. Unanimous. Those in favour of the substantive...
Chair, sorry, the move of the amendment has a right to reply.
Right. Councillor Johnson, you have a reply.
No, thanks, Chair. Just move straight to vote.
I was jumping the gun, so... Right. Vote on the substantive motion. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Motion 4 by Councillors Johnson, Scargill and Bones. Can I invite Councillor Johnson to move the motion?
Thank you very much, Chair. And can I just apologise for bringing another layer of confusion into the chamber? You've got another Johnson to deal with here. I think we're on to number 4 now, is that right? We count. So in terms of this motion, everyone in the chamber tonight recognises the valuable contribution that trees make to our borough and our communities, from shaping the landscape through to playing an essential role in the ecosystem that helps tackle climate change. However, many of our residents are raising concerns that certain trees need to be more proactively maintained by the council. This is reflected in the high numbers of members' inquiries relating to tree management issues detailed in our ward profiles. From trees that are of a disproportionate size that are too close to residential properties that cause damage, through to residents slipping on excessive leaf fall in wet conditions. The council's existing tree policy places an emphasis on the needs of trees over the welfare of our residents. Therefore, council asked the Mayor to establish a cross-party working group with community involvement that will help and propose practical measures to manage the trees in our borough. By working together, we can better manage the needs and expectations of residents, whilst acknowledging the importance of our trees. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bones. Do you wish to speak now? Please have the right. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on this? Councillor Johnson?
Sorry, yes, no Johnson to deal with on this motion, but I'd just like to forward an amendment to the motion that I've sent through.
Do we have a copy of the amendment? Do we have a copy to go around? Because I don't think everybody will be able to see that either.
I don't know if people need a couple of minutes to look through, if they're happy for that. If that's okay with the Chair.
Okay, Councillor Hannah Johnson, would you like to move the amendment?
Right. Thank you, Chair. Essentially, this amendment is reflecting the fact that we obviously all completely agree that trees are important to our borough and an important part of our landscape. To that point, one of the first conversations that I had when I took the environment brief was actually with the Director for the Environment on the fact that we were in the process of reviewing the Council's current tree policy. I think because of that, and the statutory nature of that policy as well, that the correct place for this would be to go to the Green subcommittee to consider it once that review has been done.
Do you have a seconder?
Second, I reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on the motion? On the amendment, sorry?
Yes, Chair, I think we're very happy with this amendment. Only slightly disappointed that residents' concerns have obviously been taken out. But overall, we're happy with this.
Thank you. The proposer of the amendment, would you like to speak on it? No? Right, can we go to the vote then? Or do we have a we'll go to the substantive motion now. Sorry, the amendment, can we agree the amendment first? Okay, those in favour of the amendment? Right, that was unanimous. Now, Councillor Johnson, would you like to have the right to reply?
No, I think it's straight to vote.
Right,
It's fine.
now can we go to the vote on the substantive motion? Unanimous. Motion 5, Councillors Scargill, Bones and Bartoli. Can I invite Councillor Scargill to move this motion?
Thank you, Chair. Antisocial behaviour across North Tyneside is completely out of control, not least because our Police and Crime Commissioner has just forgotten her day job and is now too focused on becoming our next mayor. We need to get serious about solving this and step up to deal with this issue with the new technologies that are available to us, and that starts by getting these drones. Drones have been used across the country to catch criminals at their homes and stop ASB for good. Just a couple of weeks ago in Sunderland, drones were used to seize 3 suspected stolen motorbikes. Residents are desperate for a solution. Let's start catching these thugs and make our estates better places to live. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
Second, I reserve the right, Chair.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak on this motion?
I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, Chair.
Okay. Right, would you like to speak on your amendment?
Yes, I'll give people a minute or two to read the amendment first, Chair.
Do you need it circulated? Does anybody wish it circulated? Yes, we'll have it circulated.
Chair, this isn't the amendment Councillor Clark sent in. This is not the final version of the amendment Councillor Clark sent in. On the screen, I haven't got the printed versions, but the one on the screen is not the final version that was sent in.
We'll just have a couple of minutes while we just sort this out, please. think it appears that the paper version is the right version. Taking that off. Does anybody wish a copy of the paper version? Anybody? No? Go on.
Sorry, Chairman, can you just clarify which is the right version?
The paper version, the one that you have in your hands, the right version.
Okay, thank you.
I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to read the paper version. Okay, can we now go back to the mover of the amendment, Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the paper version is the correct version. Apologies for that confusion. The reason for the amendment is really that the issue of antisocial behaviour, including dangerous motorbike riding, is essentially an issue about policing. And I think that is acknowledged, or at least alluded to, in the original motion, certainly the first two paragraphs of the motion. So that's the main reason. So the police are the kind of responsible body in terms of the legal aspect around this issue. And I don't think we can have a conversation about antisocial behaviour or dangerous motorbike riding without talking about policing, and that leads to police numbers also, because I think to understand issues of antisocial behaviour, we have to understand the context in which it's taking place. And here in North Tyneside, we have lost 1,200 police officers since 2010 under the Conservative government, and that's bound to have some impact on our neighbourhoods and our communities. So the answer for me is not really so much about new technology and drones, although we're open to exploring the options around that and being innovative in our approaches. But it's about adopting a partnership approach here in North Tyneside, working closely with the police, who we see as the lead responsible body. And, sorry, losing my voice. So I just wanted to say here in North Tyneside, we are very proud of the work that we are undertaking in relation to tackling antisocial behaviour. We have adopted that multi-agency partnership approach. We're working at a strategic and an operational level with a whole range of partners. We're working closely with the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and we're also working with the North Tyneside Antisocial Task Force, which was established by our elected mayor in June 2022. That's now became very well established, and it's multi-agency, and it benefits from cross-party support also. So essentially, operationally, we've got some great practical examples of what we've been doing to tackle these issues. We've got things like Operation Piaggio, which is a large-scale policing operation that commenced 12 months ago, targeting motorcycle theft, supported by the Council's CCTV capability and the Community Protection Patrols, and it's led to vehicle seizures and injunctions. The public spaces risk assessments are led by the Community Protection Team, and there's a whole range of assessments being completed aimed at identifying specific issues and local areas and communities, and where there's a problem, appropriate actions being taken place, including signage, inhibitors, redeployable CCTV, foot patrols, education, and promoting diversionary activities for our young people. So ultimately, we're not opposed to drones as such, and happy to explore the potential, although we know there's a whole range of practical issues and problems in the use of drones and the new technology. However, we see it very much as a police-related issue. The police is certainly leading the response, the partnership response within the borough and across the Northumbria Force area. So as stated in the amendment to the motion, we feel that drones may be best situated within the police force, but ultimately we need more officers on the ground to police our neighbourhoods. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's two parts to why we're moving this amendment. I think the first part is based on drones themselves, and we are under the airport flight path. Those that have been in this council a while remember when Northumbria Healthcare Trust told us that helicopters will be landed on the roof of NSEC, and they can't because we're on the airport flight path. So it just to make sure we are happy to explore the practicality, but we've got to go through these things. You need a license to do this, and because we're in the airport regulation area, just to make sure that we actually we can operate them rather than spending council money for something that's going to sit in the cupboard because we can't use them. So I think it's absolutely right that we explore the use of drones and whether they're appropriate. I do think the police are best placed to use them, and Northumbria Police have used them in partnership with the British Transport Police in the past on this exact issue. We as a council do use drones for various other things at the moment, not as antisocial behaviour, because the licensing around them and recording them and not recording residential areas, and there's a whole host of GDPR regulations and a whole host of privacy regulations that you have to jump through to make sure you can use them. So at this stage, we very much want to explore the use of them and see if it is right and it could happen. Because Sunderland are one of the few councils that are early stages in their trial, but they're still very early stages yet. They've had a couple of good results, but they also had some very big difficulties while using them as well. So it's worth exploring it for now and going so. But I think mentioning antisocial behaviour without mentioning the cuts that the Conservative Party have made to policing is ridiculous. A couple of drones will not replace the 1,200 officers that the Conservative Party have cut from Northumbria Police Force since 2010. And getting those officers back on the beat would solve this issue in an instant. So we have to recognise that as well, that one of the best things we can do to tackle this antisocial behaviour and criminality is to get more police officers back on the beat. We have been running, as Councillor Clark has just said, our multi-agency task force, which has seen the numbers of antisocial behaviour drop in the borough. The figures show that there was a reduction in antisocial behaviour last year in the borough. There is always more to do, and we always constantly want to do more. We were one of the first councils to put Nexus, to put an officer on every train, after 5 o'clock, put a security officer on every train. And it was the committee that I chair which agreed that funding to put those on. We have worked with the police on Operation Coast Watch up and down the coast for the last number of summers, which year on year has seen reductions in the number of incidents along our coastline. We've worked on Operation Maple around the borough and how to tackle antisocial behaviour and criminality. This council has a good track record of tackling antisocial behaviour. Where we need more from is the police. And when the police need more police officers to be able to do that job more effectively, they need to be able to do that. And that's why we need to call on the Home Secretary as well to restore the police officers in Northumbria. Northumbria has had more police cuts than any authority in the country, Chair. And we need them to restore the police to give us the best possible chance to tackle on this issue. Thank you.
Would any member like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I think, again, this amendment really washes down what was a simple solution to quite a complex problem. The original motion looked specifically at motorbikes within estates. And this amendment washes the council's hands of what the council can actually do to help tackle the issue of antisocial behaviour, specifically with motorbikes in estates. I think that's where it's been lost. It's once again an example of the Cabinet and the Labour Party in this chamber blaming the government and instead of actually taking action. It says council believes Northumbria Police would be best placed to tackle antisocial behaviour and use drones to tackle antisocial behaviour as opposed to the council. This council has a responsibility to our communities to keep them safe and to get rid of antisocial behaviour within our estates, but that seems to be all but missing from the amendment. We agree entirely that it should be in partnership with the police, and Councillor Clark alluded to this, but given that our Labour Police and Crime Commission has basically had her out of office on for 6 months while she runs to be the North East Mayor, it might be a little bit tricky to get in touch with her. So I think given that fact, we need, as a council, to start taking action directly on antisocial behaviour as best we can do, as other authorities in the North East have done. And frankly, this amendment does nothing towards that.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I did have a small amount to say, but first I just want to say how disappointed I am from some of the comments from the other side. I honestly thought we were going to have a good debate about some outside-the-box thinking about something that may or may not improve our response to antisocial behaviour. But the fact that you've mentioned the PCC twice means that maybe you've got one eye on the mayoral election next year. I think that seems to be the underlying thing. Look, I'm not going to go overly political because everybody in this chamber has had residents who have been affected by antisocial behaviour. And when I first saw this motion, I thought, right, let's have a look at it. It does sound great on paper. I mean, after all, drones are really cool. I mean, they are cool. But when you think about it for more than 30 seconds, you realise there are a number of issues that we haven't got answers to. So there's a lot of questions that we don't have answers to. Firstly, the motion is basically saying that we should invest large sums of public money into drone technology. Well, the question is, what type of drone technology? Are we talking about Maverick Mini personal drones? Are we on about Yancey Typhoon continuous ones that they use in Wales? Are we on about military-grade watchkeepers constantly patrolling the skies around us? What are we actually talking about with drone technology? It's not specific enough. Secondly, it's already been mentioned about legislation and training requirements. What are the training requirements? What is the legislation? Now, I'm not an expert at that, and I suspect the people who have wrote the motion are also not experts. So I don't think it's reasonable to get the council to invest large sums of public money with these questions around training and legislation left hanging there. And lastly, and this is the one which is more the thing that I think is more important, is that we haven't got any consideration of whether or not drone technology will actually improve our response to antisocial behaviour. We're being asked to assume that simply by owning drones, it will equate to a better response to antisocial behaviour, and it doesn't work out like that. How do we know drones are going to work? How do we know drones are going to have an effect? We can't just put thousands or large sums of public money into something like this on the assumption that it's going to work. You know, there's also a lot of overlap with the police. Maybe the police have already got these resources that we can help with. So we haven't even considered whether or not drones actually will work. We're just assuming that it's going to work. And we're not even assuming whether or not the amount of money that we can put into drone technology would actually be more effective being put somewhere else. So, for example, last year I had what I would class as an extreme example of antisocial behaviour in my area. I contacted the mayor, the deputy mayor, the then cabinet member, Carol Burtis, and the PCC, saying I really need just to have a quick look at this. And they got Project Vita involved, and it was a really, really successful response. So the question is, should we put all that money into drone technology, or is there a more effective use of that money? So the amendment is actually dealing with these questions. So before we put large sums of public money into basically a gamble, it's a much more effective use to actually say, actually, let's have a sit down, let's have a talk about, let's go for a rational conversation around drones and come to a logical conclusion. The unamended motion simply asks us to take a gamble on the assumption that drones will work, and I'm not prepared to take that risk. I think the amendment is a much more logical, much more practical motion, and I think all of us should just put this party politics to one side, vote in favour of the amendment, and let's have a look at this.
Councillor Spowett.
Okay. I think we're all concerned about antisocial behaviour in our respective communities, and more importantly, the impact of antisocial behaviour that it has on our communities. And I think the way forward that's been pioneered within this council is to have quite effective collaborative arrangements with the police. And a few of us were at Tynemouth Police Station last Thursday to oversee the launch of Operational Impact, as it was called. So really, I think it's about effective collaboration to tackle some of the issues associated with antisocial behaviour. But there's an example, because Northumbria Police actually deploy drones at the moment. And in the Amble area, in April this year, they used drones, and that resulted in issues associated with motorbike disorder, and 5 bikes were compounded. So to me, if we're going to use drones in North Tyneside, it has to be in collaboration with the police, because they've got that unique leadership responsibility with regard to drones. And the other issue for me, we've had a conversation tonight in terms of the impact on our budgets. So to me, a better approach would be to work in partnership with the police on drones rather than increase our cost base. And also there's the point about duplication of provision. So let's work with the police. If we can deploy drones in the area in partnership with the police, that's a much more effective use of public resources.
Councillor Mulvenner.
I'd just like to inform the opposition that the police are actually managed by the Chief Constable, not the Police and Crime Commissioner. The Police and Crime Commissioner's role is to actually monitor and challenge the police. And in turn, there's a council panel which then challenges the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I think you need to get away from it and realise that the police are managed by the Chief Constable, not the Police and Crime Commissioner. She is the person who scrutinises the police. And in turn, Tyne and Wear, along with Northumberland County Council, have members on a panel which then scrutinise her. Right? Just like to clear that point up.
Councillor Thirlway.
Thank you, Chair. I think this motion is a perfect example of why we don't run North Tyneside Council via motion to full council. If the Conservatives can't be trusted to write a motion, they shouldn't be trusted to run the council. If the Conservatives were serious about antisocial behaviour and crime, they'd be demanding more money from the budgets that have been cut over the last 13 years by their government.
Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chair. I say it's the usual lip service from Councillor Bones over there, and he's failing to say the real problem, which is 1,200 police officers missing from Northumbria Force. You know, the sooner you get onto your government and ask for funding to get these back, the better. You know, would we really be having this conversation about drones if we had the correct amount of police officers on the road? And that states, thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. My ward actually does have issues with motorbikes flying through it. And also, we are working not only with the police, but certainly with the councils to try and resolve that issue. I've actually seen some of the CCTV footage of motorcycles running through the estates, and they are quite horrific and terrifying for our local residents, and certainly we need to do something about it. Some of the difficulties is that trying to identify whom they are, and certainly trying to identify, if you want, the license plates of many of these vehicles is very difficult. So it becomes quite difficult to do that. It's a situation where, to help resolve, we've certainly got to be working with the police and ourselves to do that. I fully understand the need and the use of wanting to use modern technology to actually help us, and I think any resource that can help us, we should look into. But I'm not necessarily too convinced about the use of drones, if you want, or, because at the end of the day, remember, these are remotely piloted air systems. In other words, somebody's on the ground piloting those air systems, and they come under quite a bit of legislation. First of all, the person who deals with them has to have an operator's license. Then if they're going to use it, there's a certain height they can actually take them, and there's a certain distance that they can actually travel with them. So it becomes quite difficult if you want training staff to do that. I'm not saying it's not unsurmountable, it certainly is. It becomes quite a cost to that. And I think probably the police are the right persons to actually pick that up. And I think the issue was picked up. We live straight on the airport on the flight path. So if you take St Mary's Lighthouse, there's a course taking us to Newcastle Airport. You'll find that that flight path takes us quite across a significant part of North Tyneside, which makes it very difficult itself in actually flying a remotely controlled system in that area. And I certainly think the airport themselves would object against that. I think it's a good try, but certainly we need to look at modern technology. I get that, and I think we do that, but we can only do that working with the police and ourselves. But the key thing to this is to actually stop antisocial behaviour, to curtail antisocial behaviour. We've actually got to have boots on the ground, working with people and working with our communities to try and resolve that. Modern technology is great, but it has to have the support to do that.
Councillor Early.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think it's a bit rich of the members opposite to say that this amendment is just a device for us to blame the issues on the Conservative government, when in the introduction to their original motion, they were very clearly using that as a vehicle to attack the Police and Crime Commissioner. So there's an element of hypocrisy there. With regard to Councillor Bones' suggestion that North Tyneside Council is trying to avoid its responsibility with relation to tackling antisocial behaviour, I think if he'd listened, he would have heard both Councillors Johnson, I'm not really sure what the plural term is for more than one Councillor Johnson, but both Councillor Johnsons mentioned in their introduction to the amendment a list of actions that North Tyneside Council is taking in partnership with other bodies to try and tackle antisocial behaviour. So I can't quite see where that comment is coming from. And finally, with regard to, again, an attack on the Police and Crime Commissioner about having her out of office on because she's running for regional mayor. In the last few months, residents in my ward, in Camperdown, and in Wheatslade ward, I believe, raised issues with their local councillors about antisocial behaviour and asked if we could contact the Police and Crime Commissioner and the local police inspector to come to a meeting with them. That request was granted by the Police and Crime Commissioner, and she and the local police inspector attended a public meeting, a joint meeting across Wheatslade and Camperdown wards, and sat for over an hour and discussed the issues with residents that were raised. That hardly seems to me to be a case of the evidence of the Police and Crime Commissioner avoiding her responsibilities. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
Just want to say there has been some really good work done in South Tyneside. South Tyneside Council have worked really closely with the police around drone technology, so I think that could be something that we should be looking to explore with them and find out what their experience has actually been. In relation to the Police and Crime Commissioner, we have tried in Collinwood for the last 18 months to get her to come along to a meeting with ourselves and residents, and that opportunity basically hasn't presented itself at all, so it's been very disappointing for us.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this amendment, mainly because of they're going to explore the practicability of it, because looking at drones, I mean, it's going to throw up a whole load of issues around privacy, the legal implications, and, you know, that there's got to be proper consideration, the data protection as well. And I think that these really need to be explored. As well, I agree with the colleagues here that the police have been cut by 1,200 officers, but also coupled with that, they've decimated the youth services. So we've had like no youth workers at all. And it's right, we have got Project Vita and they do a really good job, but we do need more youth services to help tackle antisocial behaviour as well. And I do understand the distress it causes people, but I really do think that to explore and give some real evidence base about what the drones, what that would actually add to what the services we already have. But I do think working in collaboration with the police and also extending, like trying to get more youth services and more funding for that would be a much better solution. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion. The motion that we see on the screen is the very bare bones of the motion. This amendment is strengthening and adding to. And the only difference, Councillor Bones, is in the first line in blue in many of our states is taken out. So I can't understand how you think this is changing it. It's actually adding and strengthening and exploring. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else? Councillor Scargill, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. This is simply the Labour Council washing its hands of its responsibility to tackle antisocial behaviour. Of course, the police are best placed to deal with crime, but the council has a responsibility too, and the government has given us more police officers, but the problem is getting worse and worse. Our residents would be dismayed that the council is blaming everyone else for the scourge of ASB in our estates. The situation is absolutely dreadful, and something has to change. People have been reporting bikes for years, and it's only got worse. Perhaps Labour councillors are not on the ground hearing the same stories that we're hearing, with many people too scared to report ASB for fears of consequences, but it's okay because you'll be writing another letter. I'm surprised we've been criticised for mentioning the Police and Crime Commissioner's absence. We've tried to get in touch with her for years. She's not here, and I think it's understandable why we might criticise her. And of course she was going to Wheatslade and Camperdown because they had a vote in the Labour selection for mayor. But it's heartwarming to hear people defend her absence. This solution is working elsewhere in the country, but we have Councillor Newman, who wants us to sit on our hands, and if he'd read the implications, he would have seen that passing the original motion would result in a business case, which would answer all of his questions. And I think sadly there are some Labour councillors, like Councillor Clark, who would rather sit here and get angry at the government and take the moral high ground than solve issues. That's not why I became a councillor, and I can listen to her do that from home. This Labour Council is clearly completely out of touch. It's failed our estates and it's failing to accept their responsibility. We will be voting against the amendment. Thank you.
Right, now we're going to the vote on the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? Those against the amendment? The amendment is carried 43-4, votes against 7. We are now going to the substantive motion. So, there's a right to reply. Councillor Clark, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will just pick up on a couple of points there. First of all, drones, we're not against the exploration of use of that technology, which remains in the motion. Drones don't apprehend and don't arrest perpetrators. Police officers on the ground do that, and it's more police officers on the ground that are required. Secondly, North Tyneside Council is not shirking any responsibility around community safety and tackling antisocial behaviour. Far from it, we are working as part of a strong and established multi-agency approach to tackling antisocial behaviour. We're ensuring that our budgets are doing the absolute maximum they can by adding value and working with others around tackling these issues that we know are important to our local residents here in North Tyneside. We're working strategically and operationally, and we're having some positive and effective results. I want to just say the amendment is really, it reflects for me the original motion wasn't really acknowledging the partnership context in which we're working. The partnership approach, there's an agreed multi-agency response to tackling these issues, and the police are leading on that response, but they're working very closely with North Tyneside Council. We are an active part of that response, strategically and operationally. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have anybody else that wishes to speak? Can we now go to the vote on the substantive motion? Those in favour? Those against? Forty-three for, 2 against. Motion is carried. Right, we're on item 6 now. Request for dispensation pursuant of section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972, pages 30 to 36. Can I ask the elected mayor to move the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor John Hunter is one of the 3 councillors for Howden Ward. He has served North Tyneside Council diligently since 2004, and he is very proud to represent the people of Howden. As set out in the report, sadly, Councillor Hunter has had a period of ill health. This has prevented his attendance at meetings of the authority in recent weeks. The authority is able to approve a period of non-attendance for an elected member where there are good reasons. This approval must be within a period of 6 months since the last meeting attended by the member. This ensures that the member does not vacate office because they have been unable to attend a meeting. The report before council this evening makes clear that there are good reasons based on medical grounds to agree a dispensation for Councillor John Hunter. This will mean that the relevant legislation described in the report is complied with, and that Councillor Hunter does not cease office as a North Tyneside councillor. I would therefore ask that Council agrees the recommendations as set out in this report, and that the good wishes of this chamber are conveyed to Councillor John Hunter at this particular time.
Do we have a seconder?
Seconder reserves the right to speak, Chair.
Are there any questions? I'll now invite members to speak on the motion. Nobody wishes to speak? We'll go straight to the vote then. Those in favour? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you very much. Chair's announcement, item 7. Since being elected chair on the 18th of May this year, I've attended several events within 3 days. I attended the open day of Wildside Urban Forest School in Shiremoor, set up by Kendra McWilliams, who is passionate about the positive effects of nature on mental, physical and emotional well-being. All the children and parents I spoke to were extremely enthusiastic about the project. A couple of days later, I was handing out certificates at my first citizenship ceremony. The new citizens of our country came from various countries around the globe, all of whom were extremely proud of becoming British citizens and contributing to this wonderful country of ours, and theirs now. On the 27th of May, I was privileged with my consort Carol to attend the Northumberland and North Tyneside Scout Camp at Causey Park in Northumberland. There were over 1,200 scouts at the camp, spread over 3 fields, hundreds of tents, dozens of activities for the scouts to participate in. I have to say well done to the scout leaders who organised the weekend. It must have taken some planning. I attended the Falklands War ceremony at the White Swan at Killingworth with my consort and the elected mayor. Quite a moving ceremony, as of friends who fought in the South Atlantic War. I also attended the Armed Forces Day and the Sea Cadets 80th year celebrations at the War Memorial on the links in Whitley Bay. Like many of you, I attended the presentation of Alderwoman to Muriel Green, an honour which she richly deserves. I know she was very pleased to see so many members and officers there at the presentation. I believe we all thank her for her service to the council and residents of North Tyneside. I opened the Shiremoor and District's Children's Gala, or otherwise known as the Treat, alongside Tynemouth and P. Alan Campbell. The Treat has been going for more than 100 years, organised by generations of local people involved in the local schools and community organisations. A tradition born of the old mining communities, kept alive by the hard work of local volunteers. I opened Boots' new hearing care service on the Silver Link, which I was offered a free hearing test, but I declined Miss Carroll has already made a diagnosis which just says I've got selective hearing. And last week, I was at the Linkshill Centre to hand out certificates to graduates of the Two Matters Award, an education programme for professional development of those who look after 2-year-olds in schools, nurseries, or childminding. Thank you very much. And we now move to the elected mayors.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're all aware that our residents are going through difficult times at the moment with dealing with the issues like the cost of living crisis. I want to take this minute or two to share with you, despite all that, our staff are working so hard, and at the end of the day, I think I'm extremely proud of their achievements. And sometimes we don't shout enough about what our staff do for us, to be quite honest. The North Tyneside Primary School-based initial teacher training skit has been judged as outstanding. The teacher training has supported hundreds of students going into our schools in North Tyneside. Our Ready for School nursery in Riverside was also judged outstanding in June 23. Our Working Well North Tyneside pilot North Youth has attracted over 3,500 people in the year that's been opened. And there's another facility planned for Ward's End, giving people the opportunity to be interviewed, given the support they help, and training that they need to get them back into work. This success has been recognised in the most recent Ofsted inspection with an overall grading of good for the service in employment and skills. Outstanding gradings for adult learning, high needs provision, leadership and management, and behaviours and attitudes. And I could go on. So I just want to remind people, you might want to destroy our council, right, and be very negative all the time about it. But you can actually, whenever you want, scrutinise us, take us to task, ask for any information you want. But remember, we have some amazing staff who are doing an excellent job in North Tyneside. Thank you so much, Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Right. Item 9, questions by members to the council. We have 3 valid questions have been received. Question 1 from Councillor Wallace. Do you want to ask the question or do you want to take it as read?
I'll ask the question, please, Chairman. Healthy Start grants are available to some pregnant women and some families with children under 4 years old to enable them to buy additional healthy foods such as milk, fruit and vegetables, and to get free vitamins, all of which contribute to a healthier lifestyle with long-term benefits. The take-up in England, however, is only around 66%, although it's higher in Scotland. Can the elected mayor tell me what steps the council has taken to encourage applications for these grants in North Tyneside? Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wallace, for raising this really important question. The National Healthy Start Scheme is a lifeline for eligible pregnant women and families with children under 4 years, providing access to good food, fruit, vegetables, milk and vitamins, which are so important to give children the best start in life at a time when families are increasingly struggling to put food on the table. The latest data for North Tyneside shows that the uptake of the NHS Healthy Start Scheme is 66% at June 2023. This figure is similar to the overall uptake of Healthy Start in England, as noted in Councillor Wallace's question. The Council is committed, along with our NHS and local voluntary and community sector partners, to increasing the uptake of Healthy Start as part of our joint approach to ensuring every child has the best start in life. We know that during those very early years, a nutritious diet is essential for growth and development. The Council's Director of Public Health has recently led the development of an action plan with partners that's focused on raising awareness of the Healthy Start Scheme among our residents and a range of frontline workers to encourage all eligible families to apply. The Council promotes the Healthy Start Scheme through a variety of ways, including health visitors providing Healthy Start vitamins and talks to families at all key contacts about the Healthy Start scheme and providing practical support for those eligible to apply. We're delivering bite-sized training sessions to a range of frontline staff so they have the knowledge to talk to families and can offer practical help completing online forms. We display the Healthy Start scheme promotional information on the council website, on social media, in our family hubs and customer first centres. Our poverty partnership and network is also raising awareness of the scheme, sharing promotional materials to encourage take-up, particularly targeting families on low incomes through, for example, the Bay Food Bank, the Bread and Butter initiatives, where families can use their Healthy Start card. Our rates of families signing up to the Healthy Start scheme over the last 6 months has remained static at 66%, reflecting the national picture. However, we do anticipate rates will increase over coming months as partners work together to deliver the action plan and promote the Healthy Start scheme. I should just note that the Healthy Start scheme adds value to a wide range of other support this council is providing to families during the current cost of living crisis. That includes a whole range of initiatives around food and fuel, including funding for the food bank, the bread and butter thing, and a range of locality-based food pantries across the borough. We also have 25 warm hubs in operation across the borough, and we've distributed 8,320 supermarket vouchers, which equates to £15 per child per week for families eligible on income-based free school meals. And we plan to do the same over the summer holidays. It includes winter clothing, grants and support around school uniforms, a whole range of debt advice, etc. And we're currently looking at hygiene banks and baby banks, which should all support families as well. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chairman. Whilst I note the steps that have been taken, it is disappointing that the take-up is still level and only at 2/3. So in fact, we've got a third of families who are not benefiting from this. What follow-up steps are taken where advice is given? What follow-up steps are taken to encourage people further to take advantage of this scheme? Thank you.
I think, as stated, Councillor Wallace, we are currently on level with the national picture. Of course, we want to increase those numbers, hence there is an action plan in place which contains all the elements I've just outlined, and that plan is being implemented, and we expect that the uptake will increase because of that positive, assertive action. Thank you.
Chair, as per the Constitution, multiple cabinet members can't answer a question, so can I add to that answer, please?
Repeat that, please.
I think the best thing any of us could do is back our books cross-party bill that does auto-enrolment for Healthy Start vouchers. There's no reason why every family that needs these vouchers in this country shouldn't be auto-enrolled into Healthy Start vouchers, and that's what we need to do, and it needs to happen now. The Conservative government have been called upon to do this time and time again, but have consistently failed to do it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thirlway.
I shall read my question, Chair. At least 100 people in North Tyneside were denied a vote during the local elections in North Tyneside, with potentially many more put off from turning up to the polling stations in the first place. Does the elected mayor agree with me that central government should be making it easier for people to vote legally, and that compulsory photographic identification at polling stations is unnecessary, undemocratic, and amounts to voter suppression, especially in more deprived areas?
Elected Mayor, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree that any change that could act as a barrier to people voting is a concern. I know there are arguments both for and against voter ID, but I do have concerns that this was the solution to a problem that really didn't exist. Nationally, cases of voter fraud have been extremely low and rare. Thankfully, our election staff did everything they could to make it as easy as possible for people to vote. This included the preparation before the election and on the day itself. Some of this additional activity was funded nationally. However, you will also remember that this chamber agreed to send a letter to all households to reinforce the local and national advertising campaigns that we had in place. This was not funded nationally and came at a cost of about 40,000 from North Tyneside budget. But we agreed that as a local democracy, it was important. Our electorate is made up of just under 170,000 people. 69% of the electorate is eligible to vote at a polling station, with the remaining 31% having registered for postal vote. That means 108,000 people were eligible to vote at a polling station. Our records show that 261 electors applied for a ballot paper, but initially were refused because they could not show the required voter ID. Of those, 161 returned with valid photographic identification and were issued with a ballot paper. It is too early to say definitely whether this impacted disproportionately on deprived communities, but I do share your concern that this could be the case. We also don't know how many voters were put off from even attempting to vote in the first place. So I think it causes us all concern. Councillor Thirlway.
Councillor Thirlway, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. I realise my next question will probably upset a few members in the chamber tonight, but will the elected mayor write to the Prime Minister and ask him to repeal compulsory photographic identification at polling stations and scrap his proposed reforms due in the autumn? And will she share the response with all councillors?
I certainly will. Thank you much, Councillor Thirlway.
Thank you.
Question 3, Councillor Bones, do you want to ask the question or do you want to take it as well?
Yeah, I'll ask it, Chair. In September 2022, Council passed a motion asking for the Mayor to invite the Police and Crime Commissioner to give an update on progress on her policing priorities annually to full Council and take questions from members on the update. This is the last meeting before a year will have passed without an annual update and an opportunity to scrutinise the Police and Crime Commissioner. So can the Mayor please confirm whether Ms McGuinness has been invited and declined or hasn't been invited at all? Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Johnson, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bones' unhealthy obsession with the Police and Crime Commissioner really needs to stop. I can confirm that I did indeed write to Kim McGuinness, the November Police and Crime Commissioner. The Mayor did indeed write to the Police and Crime Commissioner on the 30th of September 2022, following the motion to invite her to provide an update of progress with her policing priorities to full Council. This was planned to be at this meeting, but was had to be postponed due to the Police and Crime Commissioner having to undergo surgery on her hand following an accident. The Police and Crime Commissioner does want to attend the meeting and does not want to send a substitute, which is why we have delayed this. I do hope the PCC will be well enough recovered from time to attend the next Council meeting on the 21st September 2023. In the meantime, I'm sure Councillor Bones will join me in wishing the PCC a speedy recovery.
Councillor Bones, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've seen this evening how passionate members across the chamber are with tackling crime and antisocial behaviour, and that was the very reason that this motion was brought forward to last September. I'm sure that councillors across the chamber will appreciate that hearing from the Police and Crime Commissioner on these important issues is of huge significance. And frankly, it's a little bit bemusing that the Police and Crime Commissioner was invited almost a year ago and has only now a question's been submitted to full council.
Where's the question?
I get 2 minutes, Chair, as per the Constitution.
Just get to it quickly.
It's frankly quite bemusing that almost a year since being invited and when a question was put to full council, the Police and Crime Commissioner had planned to attend only to later injure herself. And of course, we wish her the best of luck. But can the Deputy Mayor please confirm that the Police and Crime Commissioner will attend the meeting in September, should she be well enough, and that she will take questions from members?
The Police and Crime Commissioner is intending to attend the September meeting. Obviously, she'll be very busy, and I'd really hope that she is the next North East Mayor, and I will be out campaigning to make sure she is. The Police and Crime Commissioner will be here at the next meeting in September, providing she recovers from her surgery well enough.
Thank you. That's the end of business for the meeting. I would like to thank you all for your attendance.